So what is your point of view about the multiplier effects that the world should anticipate about the potential recession in UK, Europe, and especially in the United States?
Yes, we expect a recession in the Eurozone and the UK this year. That's related to the gas crisis there, which basically forms a major adverse supply shock. So lower gas supplies and higher energy prices affect the industrial production in those countries and also squeeze the real incomes of consumers. Now in the US, we expect a mild recession later next year. And that's when the higher interest rates are starting to bite. And we expect the Fed to stop hiking at 4%, which is still low compared to previous policy rate peaks in the US monetary tightening cycles. But and in our recently published global economic outlook report, we lowered our global growth forecasts by 0.5 percentage points to 2.4% for 2022, and a full percentage point for 2023 to 1.7%. So that's really low. So growth is slowing in most countries next year, and that means lower global demand for exports. And high inflation and strong central bank tightening, both imply higher yields. So quite an adverse external environment for most countries, including those in Asia.
Okay, Thomas, so is there any potential that the recession will take longer as there is still uncertainty about the end of Ukraine-Russia war, which potentially keep the energy price high and trigger high inflation?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that there's quite a lot of uncertainty surrounding the global economic outlook. And that relates to inflation and the impact of policy rate hikes on growth, but in particular also to energy prices. And these factors are also interlinked, so that makes it more complex. So currently we see commodity prices coming down in light of the slower global growth outlook. So the Brent oil price has come down to around $85 per barrel today. And that's from around I think $125 in June. So in our base case, we see oil prices average $100 per barrel this year, but then gradually go down to 85 in 2023 and $65 in 2024. But surrounding a lot of or based on a lot of uncertainty.
Okay, so Thomas, how do you see the effectiveness of increasing interest rate to lower inflation in developed countries, while they're also still facing high energy prices and also high food price?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in many countries, inflation seems to be driven by both supply and demand factors. So on the supply side, we have energy and food prices that are important. And there's quite some uncertainty in that regard. Now, the positive news on the supply side is that many of the constraints, such as transport, container costs, have been easing over the past few months. There's also the demand-driven inflation. So central bank policy can be effective to the extent that inflation is demand-driven. And in some countries, central banks really have to step on the brakes as wage growth is strong and central banks want to avoid high inflation expectations to become entrenched. Okay. So it's effective in that sense. Yeah.
Okay, talking